If you thought the rivalry between South Carolina and Tennessee needed any more fuel, think again, because what happened after that game sent shockwaves across women's college basketball. South Carolina didn't just beat Tennessee. They dismantled. From the opening tip, Dawn Staley's Gamecocks played like a team on a mission. Defensive rotations were crisp. Transition offense was relentless. Every loose ball felt like it belonged to Columbia. Tennessee, a program built on grit, banners, and legendary standards, simply couldn't keep up. By halftime, the writing was already on the wall. By the fourth quarter, it wasn't just a loss, it was an unraveling. When the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard told a brutal story: South Carolina 93, Tennessee 50. For Tennessee, it was one of the most embarrassing defeats in program history. For South Carolina, it was another statement in a season filled with. But the real firestorm didn't start until the post-game press conferences. Tennessee head coach Caldwell didn't sugarcoat anything. Frustrated. Blunt. Visibly disappointed. She told reporters her team had quit. She didn't call it inexperience. She didn't blame youth. She didn't credit South Carolina's dominance as the sole reason. She said her team quit. In Knoxville, those words landed like thunder. Calling players quitters, especially at a program with Tennessee's legacy, is not a small accusation. It implies a lack of fight. A lack of pride. A lack of competitive backbone. And once those words leave the podium, they don't disappear. They echo. By the time Dawn Staley stepped to the microphone, she had already heard the comment. And if you expected fireworks, you didn't know Dawn Staley. Because she didn't explode. She dissected. Staley acknowledged the frustration that comes with a loss like that. She knows what Tennessee represents. She understands expectations. She understands what it feels like to get hit in the mouth on a national stage. But she made something very clear, without ever attacking Caldwell directly. She said she wouldn't use that language publicly. That was the moment the rivalry shifted from scoreboard to philosophy. Staley spoke about leadership. About responsibility. About how coaches have to guard their players' confidence, especially after a public beating. She explained that when things spiral, negativity can compound quickly. And sometimes, the job isn't to expose weakness, it's to stabilize it. It wasn't a clapback. It was a masterclass. And people noticed. Social media lit up almost immediately. Some fans applauded Caldwell for holding her team accountable. Others argued that calling them quitters crossed a line. Analysts debated whether tough love builds resilience or fractures trust. But beneath the noise was something deeper. This wasn't just about one game. This was about. South Carolina under Dawn Staley has become synonymous with composure. They defend with fury, but they speak with discipline. They dominate physically, but rarely emotionally. Even in blowouts, the message remains measured. That doesn't happen by accident. It's built. In the locker room, South Carolina players reportedly stayed locked in even with a 40-point lead. That's what impressed Staley most. Not the margin. Not the highlight plays. The focus. Meanwhile, Tennessee looked rattled long before the fourth quarter. Missed rotations turned into visible frustration. Frustration turned into body language. Body language turned into disengagement. When Caldwell said quit, she may have been describing that progression. But Staley subtly reframed it. She suggested that sometimes what looks like quitting is actually young players overwhelmed by execution gaps, speed, and pressure. Sometimes it's not surrender, it's exposure. And that's where coaching comes in. The rivalry between South Carolina and Tennessee is historic. It carries decades of pride. From Pat Summitt's era to the rise of the SEC's modern power structure, these matchups aren't just games, they're statements. For years, Tennessee was the standard. Now, South Carolina is. And transitions of power are rarely graceful. Caldwell is still building her identity in Knoxville. She inherited expectations heavy enough to bend steel. When you lose by 43 at home, or anywhere, the weight multiplies. Staley knows that pressure. She lived through the rebuilding years. She endured tough losses. She absorbed criticism. But she learned something critical along the way. Public messaging shapes private confidence. By refusing to pile on Tennessee, and by subtly disagreeing with the quitters label, Staley reinforced what has made her program elite: emotional intelligence paired with competitive ruthlessness. After the game, South Carolina players echoed their coach's tone. They credited preparation. They praised defensive intensity. They acknowledged Tennessee's tradition. No taunting. No viral soundbite. Just business. Meanwhile, Tennessee's locker room reportedly held a long closed-door meeting. Caldwell doubled down on accountability but clarified that her frustration came from caring deeply about the standard. And that's where this story becomes layered. Because both coaches want the same thing. Excellent. They just communicate differently. One calls it out bluntly. The other redirects it constructively. Which approach works better? That depends on who you ask. Historically, programs built on empowerment tend to sustain longer peaks. But programs forged in blunt accountability sometimes produce immediate edge. The SEC is watching. LSU is watching. UConn is watching. Because if Tennessee absorbs this loss the right way, this rivalry could get even more dangerous. Humiliation can fracture a locker room, or harden it. For South Carolina, the message was simpler: we're still the bench. And make no mistake, this wasn't just another win. It was a psychological statement. Tennessee had been struggling in recent weeks. The loss to UConn exposed defensive lapses. Close games revealed late-game decision issues. But against South Carolina, those cracks became craters. The Gamecocks attacked mismatches relentlessly. Their depth overwhelmed. Their transition defense suffocated. And when Tennessee attempted to adjust, South Carolina adjusted faster. It was chess at full speed. Afterward, Staley was asked if she felt Tennessee gave up. She paused. And that pause said everything. Instead of agreeing, she shifted the lens. She said her team's pressure can make opponents look worse than they are. She emphasized execution differences. She praised Tennessee's fight in certain stretches. That restraint wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Because rivalries last longer when respect survives them. Now the question becomes, how does Tennessee respond? Calling players quitters publicly can ignite a spark or damage morale. The next few games will reveal. For South Carolina, the focus immediately turned forward. LSU looms. Conference play intensifies. And Staley knows dominance today guarantees nothing tomorrow. But what this moment revealed is that South Carolina's strength isn't just its tone. Tone in victory. Tone in rivalry. Tone in leadership. And in a sport where emotion can swing momentum faster than any run, tone matters. As cameras shut off and headlines began forming, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a 43-point loss. It was about two coaching philosophies colliding under bright lights. One exposed frustration. The other displayed composure. Both revealed passion. And somewhere in the middle sits the future of this rivalry. Because Tennessee won't forget being embarrassed. And South Carolina won't apologize for delivering it. The next time these teams meet, the tension will be thicker. The crowd louder. The stakes heavier. And you can bet every player in orange remembers the. You can also bet every player in garnet remembers how their coach handled victory. That's how dynasties are built. That's how standards are restored. And that's why this story isn't over. It's just getting started. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the SEC's most heated moments, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Did Caldwell go too far? Or was she right to demand more publicly? And does Dawn Staley's approach give South Carolina a lasting edge? The rivalry is alive. The tension is real. And women's college basketball just got even more compelling. Stay tuned.